Hey, Sergio. Good. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday. My name is Brittany Sherman. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to go through a presentation of the Downtown Morgan Hill Community Parklet and alternate activation. If you could hold your questions until the end, that would be great. If you have questions on Zoom, if you could raise your hands. If you have questions from the audience, please come up and use the mic so that we can all hear your question. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Maybe. Sergio, it's not working. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. If you remember, back in January 19th, the City Council directed the staff to take the next steps in implementing the downtown lane reduction and place branding beautification project. In that scope, they also included a community parklet. On March 2nd, the City Council approved and allocated funding for the community parklet and instructed staff to go ahead and move forward with research and development of a proposal. The purpose of the community parklet was to accomplish several goals, including making downtown more walkable, supporting businesses that could not afford a parklet, generally our restaurant businesses who are spending $40,000 to $90,000 on a parklet, and to create more community space that did not require a purchase. Right now, if you were to utilize one of the restaurant parklets, you would have to purchase a meal in order to utilize that. So creating more community space that did not require an actual purchase. During today's community meetings, we are going to provide an overview of the community parklet project, as well as discuss alternate ways to activate the downtown. So let's just revisit the goals of what the council wanted to achieve through the community parklet. They want the parklet to be accessible, inclusive. They want it to activate the streetscape. They want it to be free. They want it to provide some branding for the city, increase walkability, promote visitorship of the downtown district, and to support our existing businesses. So first, let's take a look at the community parklet and potential art installation. So this would create a new community gathering space, again, for the community, free of charge for those to socialize or just take a seat. This would be a passive or an active recreation. So it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be visually attractive, and it needs to create some type of place branding for downtown and the city. It would require 3 adjacent parking spaces in the downtown on Monterey Road. We do have some areas outlined that do fit those requirements. However, when we send out the RFP for the artist, the design that's selected will be determined by the area that's going to be used. So these are just right now some areas that do achieve that 3 adjacent parking spaces on Monterey Road. Here's some examples of a community parklet. So these are more for seating and socialization and just enjoying the downtown district. And here's kind of a second alternative to that as well. You see some bike parking on the side of this one. Again, these are just examples. Now you'll see something that has some of the lighting and interactive components to it. So you see they're jumping on those and they're actually changing the colors of them. And then you'll see kind of some additional different lighting here, which looks a little more LED or neon. So again, just examples for consideration. So as we were looking through the community parklet and reviewing the designs and thinking through what could we do and how big can it be and how can we activate it, we also came up with some alternative activations. So we came up with a retail kiosk alternative activation, and we came up with a temporary programming and street activation alternative. So first, let's take a look at the retail kiosk. So the retail kiosk is going to create a retail incubator and reduce the barrier to entry for some of our home-based and independent retailers. If you think through the Sidewalk Saturday event that's going to open April 1st this year, you can see we have about 50 vendors on hand. Many of them, most of them are home-based vendors. Some of them are ready to take the next step into building their business, however, can't afford or don't have the staff to go into a brick and mortar space. So this would allow them that kind of intermediate jump in to kind of get their feet wet in the retail sector. The retail kiosk needs to be inclusive, visually attractive, illuminated, and again, create a sense of place branding. It needs to maintain open sightline visibility to our existing businesses so that as you're driving through, you can see straight through that it is a complement to our existing businesses, not a competitor. We would require weekend and weeknight activations. What we've heard a lot from this community over the years is that we want more retail downtown and we want retail on the weekends and we want it for longer hours on the weekends. So that would be a requirement for using those spaces. Again, this, just like the community parklet and art installation, would require 3 adjacent parking spaces on Monterey Road. Again, it would be those similar areas that we outlined on the map, but not limited to those. Here's an example of what the retail kiosk could look like. You can see it's got a little bit of branding here. You can still see sightline visibility to any of the businesses that might be on the alternate side. Here's another example. And here's one more. So again, just examples of what they might look like. And our second alternative activation is a temporary programming street activation. So what this would be a series of free, family-friendly downtown programming events. They would be single-day events. They would occur on the weekends, and it would be a weekend-only street closure. We would collaborate with our local partner organizations and our nonprofits to activate and put together some type of programming for the community. The programming would either enhance some of the existing wonderful events that we have in our community or create new programming. We would focus on local attendance, not regional attraction. It would be both free and paid programming. And it would encourage patronage of downtown restaurants and our retail shops. This would occur on Monterey Road between Main Street and 4th. So it would still leave access to the parking garage and the south side. And here's some examples, dog days of summer, as I like to call it, in the top left. And then, of course, we would incorporate the outdoor movie nights because those were a hit last year when we did that. Here's another example. This is a sidewalk chalk art. So we could do a kids sidewalk chalk art competition and festival. Just some really neat ways to brand the city, as well as we have some of our local artists come out and people coming in and taking Instagram photos. And another example here would be an outdoor dinner right down Monterey Road. So it would look kind of like a lot of communities are doing harvest dinners. So kind of a wine and food pairing. So now I've taken the goals and I put them on the left side here. And then I've put all of our community parklet and art installation, retail kiosk, and temporary programming and street activation on the top. So we can kind of see which of the buckets each of these achieves. Most of them achieve all of them. The only one that doesn't achieve all, at least in a yellow or a green, is going to be the retail kiosk, and only because it's not free, because it still does require someone to come in and make a purchase in order to enjoy that space. So I'll kind of give you a minute to take a look at that. Anything outlined in green is an absolute 100% yes, it does hit that box. Anything outlined in yellow is a yes, it sort of gets us there. Anything in red is that no, it does not. All right, and that is the end of my presentation, and I welcome all of the feedback that you'd like to give, answer any questions, and feel free. You have to come up, Mr. Wallace, please.
Could also repeat the question. When I would ask if you want to repeat the question.
Oh, okay.
And then they can do something
Hello.
else.
Front and center right here, Mr. Wallace, please.
My,
I don't know if it works.
oh, you want me to center? So what I had a question about was in regard to the kiosk. Now there'll be a permanent item, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so what is this projected to, when is it going to start? When are they going to start putting this together?
So if we look at the retail kiosk, so they each have a little bit of a different timeline just based off of the design and the lead that we would need. So with the kiosk, we could have those purchased. However, it still would require us to build the bottom parklet. So we'd have the parklet that we would need to purchase, the retail kiosk that we would need to purchase, implementing those together. And then we would have an RFP process that would go out to our independent and home-based retailers to see who's interested. And then we'd have a vetting process. And then this would be a semi-permanent activation, just like we are doing for the restaurant parklets right now. So 7+ years is how we would activate that. But the activation, as far as the retailer goes, would be a short-term, low-cost lease. And then we would flip those through to different retailers or expand those based off of the productivity of that vendor.
And when is this going to start coming into fruition?
So these, I believe, we would start coming into fruition in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
How'd I do that?
Very good. Any other questions?
Hardware investment.
Okay.
You have to go up there though.
Oh,
You'll need any help in up there.
On part of it, you use the word required. So define that a little better. There's one of the slides where it required a usage or something.
oh, yes. Yeah, so specifically on the retail one right here, we would require weekend and weeknight activation. So what we heard a lot from the community was not only we want more retailers downtown, but we want our existing retailers and any new retailers to stay open longer hours during the week and to stay open longer hours on the weekend. Because as they're waiting to dine at a restaurant, they're looking around or they're coming in early before brunch, but none of the retailers are open. So that's kind of the feedback that we heard from the working groups a few years back, and then just consistent community feedback, more retailers, longer hours.
And these kiosks, are they all funded by the retailer or who?
Yeah, so the funding that the city council has allocated for this project, we would use to build the parklet and we would use to purchase the kiosks. And then we would do a low cost lease out to each of the retail vendors. And then those would flip through. It would be a low cost short term. So perhaps it's a 3-month lease for a certain amount of time. And it's maybe a set fee and then a revenue share cost above that. There's multiple ways we could do that.
Okay, one more thing. You're going to build the parklets, means you're going to actually do something with the pavement and et cetera, right?
Correct. So we are holding ourselves to the same standards we would to any of our restaurant operators that are building the parklets right now. So we'd go through the Morgan Hill Outdoor Dining Parklet program.
What about all the existing barriers that are out there now?
So, so for the outdoor dining, all of the orange barricades have been removed. So all of those have been removed. Anybody that's still out there now is transitioning into the new Parklet program. Thank you. Hi, Nick.
Good morning, Brittany. Nick Gation, I'm representing the Chamber of Commerce. A couple of questions as it relates to the first, thank you for your presentation, as well as thank you for the options that we're now under study at this point. I know the Chamber of Commerce board right now is kind of soaking through this and we'll create obviously a position statement before it goes to City Council. But a quick question on the retail kiosk. This is required weekend and weeknight operations. So I guess I'm envisioning the kiosk would really be more of a permanent fixture along Monterey Road, and then obviously there'd be a rotation of retailers that are taking a look at how to accelerate, you know, from an incubator to where they want to go as far as the base business. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And we would envision still using the 3 adjacent parking spaces on Monterey Road, and in that space being able to put 2 kiosks there.
And maybe can we go to the one slide that really kind of align the goals of the council to obviously the 3 options?
Sure.
And just make sure that I understand the color coding. If it's in yellow, what does that represent versus the green and the red?
Yeah, so green is 100%, it achieves this goal. The red, it 100% does not achieve that goal. That's why the retail kiosk in red, because you have to make a purchase really to enjoy that space. Now, everything in yellow is kind of like yes, it sort of kind of gets there. Or maybe, so let's see, for example, our community parklet and art installation, does it support existing businesses? Well, it may bring some people downtown. They may shop and go somewhere else, or they may not. So it does about 50 to 75% of what we need it to do.
I wonder if you can kind of speak to the category of branding. I mean, one thing that we do love about this is we're really talking about local residents, you know, kind of a flavor of Morgan Hill internally here to our citizens. From a branding perspective, the temporary program and street activation is in the yellow. So help me understand what the branding category really is all about.
Sure. So the branding category, if we look at the community parklet and art installation, it's a very clear installation. It's going to have some type of logo. It's going to have our branding. It's ours. Kind of the same thing as the retail kiosk, that picture that I showed. It's the green and white. It has the logo on it. Very clear branding. This is a City of Morgan Hill initiated activation. The reason why we put the temporary programming and street activation in the yellow is because that is really meant for local. It's really meant for local, not regional. So in a sense, it brands us locally, but not regionally, where one of these other ones could brand us, whether you're looking through the retailer that's in the retail kiosk, they've got an Instagram following and they're really branding that on a more of a regional scope. And same thing with the community parklet and art installation, as people are coming and they're taking photos and they're tagging themselves on it, kind of more of a regional branding, not so much a localized one.
No, I appreciate a better understanding of really what the branding category is all about. If you take a look at this from a long-range perspective, can you talk a little bit about the fiscal sustainability of all three programs and kind of where that falls in place?
Sure, sure. So if we look at the community parklet and art installation, so once it's in, it's in. Again, that's very similar to the retail kiosk in the way that we're building out the restaurant parklets. It's a 7+ year program. Once we invest in putting that parklet in there, it's in there. So those are going to be long-term. The only difference between those two and really the temporary programming and street activation is that these two will require general maintenance. So above and beyond the price to build the parklet, to put the art installation in, to purchase the kiosks and put them in, there will require some maintenance long-term on those. Now, looking at the temporary programming and street activation, we have the funding. How many activations we can do really depends on when we're working with our partner organizations and figuring out which programming, how much of the dollars are we enhancing an existing event, which is a little more cost effective than creating an entirely new event. So that can be stretched, I think, anywhere from 4 to 6 events, just depending on how we use those dollars. Now, moving forward, could another organization pick that up or pick some of those events up and move them on and fund them and create their own and make it their own? Absolutely, 100%.
So there's potentially there's some other opportunities, greater opportunities that can come down the road once these programs actually get put into place.
Correct.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Nick. Any other questions? Yeah. Take your time, we're fine.
Erica Foster United Methodist Church right downtown. Easy question, I hope. I didn't notice on the slides where the geographic area was totally impacted or will be impacted by both the kiosks and the.
Okay, let's go back to our one map. I think this is the one. Is this the one that you're referencing?
Yes.
Mhm. So these locations, sure, these locations here are just locations where we have 3 adjacent parking spaces on Monterey Road. So places that we think will provide the most value to the community, the most walkability, and the easiest access. So, and again, these are not the only areas that we can provide. We're just kind of trying to give an example of they could be on the north, on the south, on either side of Monterey Road.
And your north and south boundaries are?
Main and Dunn there.
Main and.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you
No
very
problem.
much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for your feedback. Thank you for attending, and we will see you at 6 o'clock if you'd like another round. Thank you.